Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, CesarRespino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, CesarRespino, and today I have a guest. She is a successful and certified mental fitness coach, the best-selling author of From Burnout to Best Life, and a TEDx and motivational speaker. She helps executives move past burnout to happy, healthy, fulfilled life. It is my pleasure to introduce Lisa Hammett. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Cesar. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, and definitely thank you for being here. Tell me a little bit more about you. Tell me more about where are you originally from and how was your upbringing?
So I am originally from California, Northern California, and I grew up outside of Sacramento and went to college at the University of the Pacific and the Valley area, agricultural. And then after college, I moved to the Bay Area, and I lived in the Bay Area until 2002. And then I moved to Texas with my husband, and I was in a corporate retailing background, and that's what brought us to Texas. I'm an only child. I'm actually adopted. And yes, I think that's good. So
I always like to, because I believe that we all have a really good, a lot of people that come to the show, they have a really good story now, right? And they've gone through a lot of things. And as you know, we can overcome anything. And again, at the same time, sometimes people do not know what they do not know, right? And we go through a lot of people ourselves, we go through a lot of different things. And I think that's really the missing element for a lot of people to be able to say, you know what, if that person didn't, or if they had that kind of lifestyle, or if they grew up in those circumstances, and they're now playing at a different level, or they're in essence perceived as being successful, then I can also do it, right? So having that said, tell me a little bit about what you just mentioned. So you were adopted. Tell me about what was that for you growing up, right? I mean, how did that, whether impacted positively or negatively in your life?
Great question. So my parents adopted me in a private adoption. I'm 58 years old. I'll just put that out there. So they adopted me. Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So they adopted me in 1965, and all the paperwork and everything was done before I was even born. I don't know anything about my birth mother other than that she was in college at the time. And my father, I think I found him through Ancestry. He lives in Arkansas, but I haven't reached out to him. So as far as my upbringing, my parents were very generous and giving. They grew up in the Great Depression. So, they weren't really affluent, but they gave me a very good life, and they helped me get through college. Now, I will say my mother was bipolar. So that was interesting. Growing up as a child, she was either loving and wonderful, or she would completely shut me out for, weeks at a time. So that was challenging. And I grew up, with some tendencies of, okay, we have to keep mom happy because we don't want her to go down that path, but my dad was always really loving and supportive, and he tried to be kind of the intermediary. So I would say that would be, yes, it was challenging, but really overall, I was pretty fortunate compared to some.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
At which, how old were you when you found out that you were adopted?
Oh gosh, trying to remember. My parents never tried to hide it from me. Really, when I can recall, it was probably in junior high,
Hmm.
when they became a little more, I guess, vocal about it. And, that's when my mother told me that my birth mother was, college student. And she asked me if I wanted to know any other
Mm.
information. And at that time, I really didn't. I
Yeah.
just didn't, because my adopted parents had always been my parents. So I really didn't know anything
Hmm.
otherwise.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's huge. No, that's good. And I've had other people that have been on the show, and obviously, again, there's the good stories or the not so good stories, and at the end of the day, there's definitely an impact that can
mhm,
make that person. Yet I also know that the reasons that take place in our lives kind of shape who we are now, right? And
mhm.
so that's huge. So after going to college, and you just kind of venturing to like corporate America, working for other companies, um, tell me a little bit about that before you kind of venture into things you're doing right now.
Well, that led me to really kind of where I am today. So I spent 26 years in the corporate retail sector. Didn't anticipate going into retail at college. I was a business major with an emphasis in marketing, and I really wanted to work for like a big marketing company like Procter and Gamble or
Mm,
something like that, and they didn't want anything to do with me.
right.
So I was out of school and I was living with my parents, and I'm like, okay. Then I just started applying for any kind of job. And a local department store chain, you may recall, Broadway stores,
Hmm.
way back in the day, hired me through the wine stocks division, which was in Northern California. And I started in their management training program. And they eventually became absorbed with Federated, that owned Macy's at the time. So then I ended up working for Macy's, moved to the Bay Area, and then, spent a long time in the retail sector. And, retail is kind of a love hate relationship. When you're young, it's fun, it's exciting, it's fast paced. When I was a buyer, I got to travel to New York all the time, and that was really exciting. But then as you get older and kind of try to settle down and have some semblance of a quality of life, it can be
Right.
difficult
Yeah.
because you're working all the time and it's every weekend. And even when I was in the corporate aspect, they still expected you to work,
Yeah.
on weekends and come in, especially around the holidays, work in the stores. So it led me to burnout.
Mm.
And that kind of started my
Your journey.
trajectory.
Before you jump into that, and you said something that I think I was just thinking about it. I was on somebody over the weekend, exactly what you just mentioned, right? You're right. I do believe that when you're younger, you can definitely handle and deal the whole. There's so much fast pace, and it comes to a point where we don't think that life is gonna go by on a blink of an eye, right?
Mhm.
Except I think that as you get older, at least I've noticed that now, is that life is going by so fast. And so now if I'm working in an environment that is super fast, like I feel like my days are coming to an end even faster, right? If that makes sense. And so I
Totally.
can, I can, I can definitely see why, for sure, once you reach a level of age, right?
Mhm.
You definitely want things to slow down, because as it is, life is going fast. I mean, I was just really talking to somebody over the weekend, and I'm like, we're already towards the end of the year. Like, where did this year go,
I know.
right?
I
Whereas if
know.
I ask somebody else, like, man, this year has been really slow, because they're in their younger years, they don't see that, right? And so I can definitely also relate to the fact that what you just mentioned. When I used to work for corporate America, working 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, uh, getting calls in the middle of the night, you can definitely get burned out. And on top of that, which I know that's one of the things that you help people do now, is not only was I getting burned out, I was also unhealthy. I was a bit
Oh,
overweight.
totally.
I wasn't really taking care of myself. It also hindered some relationships. It was just all of that stuff. So talk
Mhm.
about that in terms of your experience about the burnout.
Yes, everything that you just described really happened to me. I was 65 pounds overweight, And what started as tension headaches led to chronic migraines. And then I was having digestive issues. I always thought, gosh, I had the flu all the time. What the heck is going on? I mean, it was terrible. I wasn't sleeping. That's a huge byproduct of stress is poor sleep. And I was averaging between 3 and 4 hours a night. The unhealthy aspect, because you're not getting enough rest, you're using caffeine and everything to keep you awake, and the pressure was just debilitating. And I was newly married at the time. I had been with my husband for a while, but we were newly married, and I just became an absolute nightmare to live with. And he told me, he's like, I love you, but I don't like you at all. You are just a nightmare. And I don't care what you do, but you have got to get out of that job because it's killing you. And he was so right. And I thank him for saying that to me, because it was a big wake up call, because I was depressed and I wasn't myself. And in fact, I remember waking up one morning, and I don't know if you ever felt this way, but I looked outside and the world just looked gray. Like there was no color left in it. And obviously that's a big sign of depression. And it freaked me out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful. So in a moment of desperation, I quit a long-term career, 26-year career at a high salary without an exit strategy. And it caused significant financial hardship because I didn't plan for it. So we ended up filing bankruptcy. And if anybody in the audience is experiencing or has experienced financial hardship, especially bankruptcy, it is terrible. Talk about the stress with that. You have creditors calling you all the time, and they say, oh, they can't call you at work, but they do anyways. And it's mortifying. And that just added a whole nother layer. So not only was I unhealthy, but we were really struggling financially. So I went through a huge life restoration. And my first thing was to lose the weight. And I lost the 65 pounds. I actually went to work for Weight Watchers and I was working for them for 11 years and developed a love for coaching, got a lot of great certifications in behavioral science. And then during the pandemic, so many people who knew my background came to me. They were stressed, they were overweight. They're like, I just feel lost. I don't know what to do. So I realized that I really needed to have a greater skill set. So that's when I went after my life coaching training. Mm-hmm. And then last year, I actually completed my certification in positive intelligence mental fitness, where I can help people identify like the root cause of what's causing the stress. So, that horrible experience, it was difficult, but it really led me to where I am, because now I help serve those clients really that I was in the corporate sector.
No, yeah, and that's huge. And so, there's so many things that I can relate with you, because again, I was kind of in the same place as you were. I always say, I had to take that leap of faith, right? And even being able to, and so I want to get your opinion on this, at least at that moment, and whether you see it that way now or not, is, for me, even being able to say, what, I'm gonna leave a well-paying job that, is paying me good, right? I mean, I left this job that was paying me way over 6 figures. I had a lot of friends telling me, like, are you crazy? Like, you're always traveling, you have all these benefits, you have all of this stuff. Except, again, I found myself, even to this day, I have the habit that if you and I go out to dinner and we sit down to eat, like, I literally finish my food so fast because I was always on the go. I was always eating and working. And even if I try to eat slow, I can. It's a little bit challenging for me because, again, I'm so used to like just eating super fast. And again, led me to, being overweight, having, again, also, as you said, stress, anger issues, all these different things that were building up for me that led to a lot of different things. And so the question that I have in essence is, although, it definitely created a burnout for you, and then it also created a financial challenge for you, would you do it differently if you have the chance or not? And then for me, is like, even the fact that I was making that big money, I was okay taking that step down, if you call it, to be able to regain and gain some of the other things that now I have. And I know that even then I will still do it, that way.
Yes, that's a great question. So I would do it, but I would do it in a slightly different way. So if I had known then what I know now, I could have
Right.
better managed my stress, because
Hmm.
that was the big thing, because everything that I experienced really could have been prevented. But I allowed my stress to get so bad that it impacted my relationship with my spouse, my health and well-being. It was terrible. So had I managed that, I would have been more intentional about how do I exit this toxic environment. I still would have left it. And to your point, Caesar, money isn't everything. Yes, it's great. And we need money, obviously, to pay our expenses. But it shouldn't be the end all be all in our life, because just living that way can be really lonely and not satisfying, and can really alienate ourselves, from having quality relationships if that is the only focus. But yes, it is important to a degree as well. So I would have been more intentional, and I wouldn't have let myself get to the point where I wasn't at least bringing in some decent enough salary to prevent bankruptcy. So that would have been the change. But 1,000%, it was the right thing to do to get out of that toxic environment and reclaim my health and well-being and rebuild my mindset. I mean, that was the biggest thing, is the whole mindset piece. I was so negative. I mean, I was one of those people that you really hate to be around, because they're so negative, and they're always thinking about, oh, anything horrible that's going to happen in life is going to happen to me. I was that victim that, oh, it was terrible. And now those are the people that I really try to stay away from, because they
Yeah.
destroy your energy. But, I kind of chuckle about it now, but I was that person, and I allowed myself to get there, and I could have prevented it.
Yeah, yeah. No, and again, even with the things you're saying, they're so relatable, and the biggest thing is, yeah, I do believe, and even now, what I know now, I think back in the day for me, and I don't know if that was the same thing for you, I was more focused on chasing that money, right? Even I wanted to
Yes.
move up the corporate ladder and do more and this stuff, and even when I left left the corporate world to become a full-time entrepreneur, for me, uh, the idea, the primary idea was like, well, I can make more money if I focus on this. And so I left my corporate job, went into real estate investing. I said, I can make a lot of money. Yet I realized though, and this perhaps my advice to a lot of people is that, that again, you can also burn out of that
So
idea,
true.
that thought. And I said, now I changed that, and I said it is not so much about the profits. They're absolutely important, except again, stop chasing profits. Right? What you need to do is you need to chase purpose, and the profits will come. When you chase
Yes.
purpose, then all that stuff is going to come in, on its own. And I didn't see it that way, because again, if you're only chasing profits, that can come to an end super fast. Especially, at least for me as an entrepreneur, there's no real purpose for you, and I think it's different, doing that versus when you're at corporate America. At least it was for me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that. That is so true. I completely agree with you. It's interesting. I'm reading this book right now, and it's called, I don't know if you've ever read it, I Am a Money Magnet.
Oh, okay.
She's amazing. Dr. Amanda Barrientes. I'm in a mastermind group,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a speaker. And it's not just pertaining to money, it's pertaining to relationships
Mm-hmm.
and health and well-being. It's anything really that you want in life, and it ties into that purpose. And there's a 30-day free course that goes along with it, and she talks about these mantras, which is kind of a combination between an affirmation and a mantra, that helps you just realign your mind and focus on that purpose, so that you are living into your zone of genius, which is exactly what you're talking about. Because when we're so focused on one thing, it actually can really hurt us that way, because it's almost like we're desperate, and we're focusing on it from a level of fear that we might not even be aware of per se. But when we're leaning into our purpose and what we not only are passionate about, but aligns with our core values, it's that ease and flow. You know, it's you're living into your zone of genius, and then you can expect what you put out then can come back to you. So kind of just, you know, the basic law of attraction. But I'm so glad you brought that because I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So, so you're in this space. You definitely say, okay, well, I'm burned out. Now you kind of took all of that and took that leap. You end up going through all of that stuff, and you discover what you have going on right now. So let's talk about that. How did you kind of? I mean, you obviously were living it, and yet how did you kind of come up in serve and now start helping people in that same way, and really focusing on the things that you talked about is, you know, being able to not be burned out, having a better healthy life, and having a better lifestyle.
Yes. So, like I'd mentioned, the first thing I had to do was reclaim my health and well-being. And in doing that, I also helped to start to change my mindset, because when you develop sustainable, healthy habits, it's all mindset related. Because you could say, oh, I want to lose a bunch of weight and get healthy and do all that. But if you don't believe in your mind that it is possible and that you can do that, you will never, ever be successful. So I really had to go through that mindset transformation, and it took a lot of time and work. And I'm not going to say that I don't have bad days still, like we all do, you know, but the difference now is I recognize if I'm starting to go down that path, then I know now with the tools that I have developed on how to shift that and get myself out of that. Because I hear so often, especially, you know, with the people that I coach, is that, you know, one bad day in the whole scheme of things doesn't seem like that much, but that bad day can turn into a bad week, which then can turn into a bad month, which then becomes a bad 6 months to a year. And then before you know it, your life is just completely derailed. So, you know, it's really spending a lot of time on that self-development. And I did that, you know, for years. And then through, you know, coaching Weight Watchers, I started to be in front of bigger audiences, and I just realized that I loved being in front of people, especially when it was a really interactive conversation, because I get so much energy from my audience. You know, I love hearing what their challenges and what their successes are, and that just fuels me. So, you know, that just kind of developed that love. And then in 2000, and let's see, 2 years ago, actually, I started my book. And again, it's kind of all part of the progression, you know, and I never thought that I would write a book, but you know, the pandemic happened, and I would love to hear how you ended up writing your book. But you know, the pandemic happened, and I started blogging, and I thought, well, that's a good way to connect with people. Right. So I started blogging, and interestingly enough, the people that I connected with were in the publishing space, and they all said, wow, you know, you have some good content. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And, you know, you hear that the first time and you're like, thanks, you know, you're like, oh, you're too kind. And you just don't really think about it. And then when you hear that repetitively, again, that law of attraction and how the universe is working, then I'm like, okay, there's something to be said for it. So I just said, I'm going to write a book. And I had absolutely no earthly idea what I was doing, because I had never published a book before. I was so naive. I thought, okay, so you need artwork for the cover and you need an editor, and that's it. Well, you know, clearly there's way more to that. So it was a process.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it turned out great. And yeah, so I'm excited to say, yes, my book.
No, that's awesome. And that's huge. And again, it's interesting because I feel like there's so many different similarities between, you know, the things you did and that I did too, and that's the whole purpose of this too, is that again, sometimes you're gonna find somebody doing something very similar and then say, hey, you know, when I have double validation, right, or whatever that might be, I can also do it too, right? And so you know, I'll give you the quick short story on that. It's the same thing. I was going through a lot of self-development myself, because coming out of after my the very last job, I was in the industry of logistics. I was working for a logistics company for over 20 something years. And I ended up leaving that job. I took my leap of faith to venture into becoming just a real estate investor. And with that, I wanted to also work on my mindset. And obviously, I was going through some challenges with my relationship of 10 years, which ended up right after I left my job. I was overweight. And so I wanted to do more. I wanted to work on more on myself to not only better my real estate business, also better myself as a person. And so through that, and going through a lot of that mindset, seeing things from a different perspective and all that stuff, I said, you know what? I think I would like to write a book. I think it would be a good idea for me to write this book right here, just to tell my story. Except something happened to me that I think happens to a lot of people. And that's why it's important for you to work on your mindset. And I did something that I would say 95% of the people do. I talked myself out of doing it. I started self-sabotaging, and I said, you know what? Hey, I literally have this conversation. I was like talking to myself, like, hey, Cesar, you're not a writer. No one's gonna want to read your book. Who's gonna buy it? Why even bother? And so that voice, that talk said, you know what? I said, yeah, you're right. I'm not any of that stuff. And who am I kidding, right? And so I talked myself out of writing the book. And for about 2 months, I didn't do anything. I left it alone. Then I went back to another self-development seminar that I've been going to for quite some time. And I kind of got motivated again. Except this time, what I did, and this is what I always challenge people to do, is when you're seeing something that maybe doesn't make sense, try to put on different glasses or a different lens. See it from a different perspective, a different point of view. And so I said, you know what? What if I do this for me as a self-accomplishment? Who cares? This is for me, not for anybody else. I'm gonna write this book for me because I want to feel accomplished. What about if I do this book so that I can leave a legacy, a book behind for my daughter to read? I don't care if nobody buys it. It's gonna be for that. So I changed the dynamics. I changed the purpose, who this was gonna be for and for what. And it was for my self-accomplishment, that I did something that I can feel proud of. And number two, I wanted to leave something behind for my daughter. When I changed that and I looked at it from that perspective, I began writing my book, and I finished my book within that was December. So by March, I was done writing the book. I was like writing a lot every day, and I finished writing the book. We published the book, and to this day, I'm like, oh my God, not only I did what I wanted to do. Again, when you start seeing things and you start attracting things from a different perspective, I was getting emails and text messages from people that I've never met saying, you've changed my life. The things you talked about have made me see things differently. And I was like, and there was people that I also knew that say, hey, you really impacted me positively. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. Right. And so that was the story on that. And then from there, through the pandemic, other things came out of that. This podcast came out of that. Then I started a book series that came out of that. And to this day, I'm like 18 times best-selling author. So many things have come out of that because, again, you just took the action. So, yeah.
So awesome. I love that. And that's so true, because we get stuck in these ruts, and sometimes it does. It takes us to just kind of step back and look at the situation from a different lens. And I mean, look what you attracted by doing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about your TEDx. What was your topic on? And also tell me a little bit about your coaching program.
So my TEDx, this is an interesting story. So our topic, if anybody's ever done a TEDx, the theme, there's a common theme, and then everybody in that group has, a theme that they have to follow. And ours was breakthrough, because we had come out of the pandemic. So mine was breaking through stress by developing mental fitness. So it was a great experience, but so I had a microphone incident. When you are going through a TEDx, they mic you up in the green room, they check the mic, everything, and you're sitting there waiting. Well, I had been doing my positive intelligence PQ rep, so I was, grounded, I felt focused, I was excited, everything was awesome. So I heard my name, I go up out on stage, I look at the audience, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. And I start, and everything is awesome. And then I'm not 10 seconds in, and the MC, I hear her saying, stop, Lisa, stop. I'm like, what? And she rushes over and she said, your mic's not on. Well, the person who had mic'd me up inadvertently turned my microphone back off. So I was looking out at the audience and everybody was like horrified. They're like, this never happens, especially in a TED talk, they're never. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to be okay. And I just like shrugged and just was relaxed. So she had her hand like up the back of my shirt because obviously they wire you, in your clothes. So that was probably not the most attractive, but she got it turned on. And then she said, can you please start over? So I did. And had I not been in a good space and had practiced these techniques that I share with others, I would have completely derailed. And what was ironic about this whole situation is it pertained beautifully to my topic. And out of 19 speakers, I was the only one who had a microphone incident.
Wow.
I know. So at the end of my TED Talk, I referenced how this technique that I share with the audience, it was an interactive technique, how it can help in unpredictable situations like a microphone incident. And it could not have been more perfect. I mean, I totally believe that was, some kind of intervention here.
Yeah, right.
But so it was a great experience. Yeah. And going into how I serve my clients. So mental fitness is the foundation of my practice. And it's really the study of how our left brain and our right brain, really impact all of our behavior. And it's identifying those negative thought patterns that influence our behavior, the behavior of others, and ultimately our life. So I help clients, I go through an in-depth 6-week course to identify those negative thought patterns, learn how to intercept them with the techniques that I showed in my TED Talk so that they can then look at life from a different lens, like you were saying, with curiosity, laser focused vision, calm, peace, and calm, so they can live their best life. So I can do group coaching, I do one-to-one coaching, and then obviously I'm a motivational speaker and an author. So
no, that's amazing. You definitely have a lot going on for yourself now, and that's huge.
Yeah.
What can people connect with you, find out about your coaching program, find your book, things like that?
So the best way is through my website. Very easy. It's Lisa Hammett. That's with 2 M's and 2 T's, HAMMETT. So lisahammett.com. And you can see about my book. There's a link to purchase it. I have my speaking engagements, a lot of them on there. So you can learn about that. You can learn about my coaching. And yeah, that's the best place to get a hold of me. And all my social links are on there too.
Yeah, that's huge. Talking about, the mental fitness and really talking about that, the mindset, right? I'm sure you come across clients that might be facing difficult challenges, whatever that might be. So for the people that are listening to us and are watching us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing or a few things they can do to start overcoming those challenges?
The first thing is don't do what I did. I'm not sure if you did the same thing, but I chose to try to ignore those little early warning signs, which then led me to, a much worse position. So, if you're not sleeping well, okay, that it's stress. Most often it's stress. About 98% of the time when we don't sleep well, it's due to stress. So notice those warning signs. If we're having chronic migraines or whatever, you got to seek help. So find somebody that you can talk to. If it's actually physical health problems, clearly, go to your doctor. But, talk to somebody, talk to somebody that you feel comfortable with, who is objective. It could be a coach, it could be a counselor, but it could be a mentor, that somebody that you respect. It could be, if, faith-based, it could be a pastor, just somebody, a colleague that you trust. Talk to them, because sometimes it's just a matter of opening up and talking about it to recognize that, what, there's some things I need to work through. But like you said, we can talk ourselves out of things all the time. And somebody who's objective can recognize that, this is legit, and let's talk about this and let's get you some help. So I always say that's a good place to start, and be kind to yourself, because you're going to have days where, you're going to say, oh, I can't do this. I can never do this. Who do I think, I am? And it's just a load of crap, honestly. It really is, because all those negative thought patterns that we have, they're manufactured lies, bottom line. They're not factual. And they can just completely ruin our life if we allow them. So don't let that happen. Oh, you're muted, Caesar.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. No, I definitely love that. And there's definitely things that we have to look at. And as you said, we gotta, follow those signs. And I know myself didn't, and definitely sometimes that can cost you more than anything. And I always say that even if you feel something, follow that sign. And if it was a false alarm, I guess you took some sort of action, you did something about it. I always tell people that we have the ability and the choices to react to any decisions that we make. The biggest challenge is that sometimes we get hung up on not making the decision because of the fear of something, or just not knowing what the outcome is going to be, and therefore we get hung up on not making the decision, which internally it is making a decision of not making a decision. So definitely that. Do you have any habits, anything that you do on a daily basis to kind of keep you up and running and going?
Yeah, so I'm going to teach you really quick a little mental fitness technique. And it's something, if you start to feel like really stressed, and this is kind of what this isn't kind of, it's what I did to keep me in the right mindset with my TEDx. So what you can do is you can engage your senses in a 10 to 15-second micro meditation. And it could look like this. So look at something in front of you, that's in your immediate environment. So for the listeners, look at something in your immediate environment and just zero in on something. And I want you to look at it and notice all the tiny details. You might have seen it a million times before, but really notice tiny details, colors, shapes, textures, a reflection in the surface. Just really stare at it. Do that. And then shift your focus to something that you can hear. And it might be a distant sound like a passing car, or if you're in an office environment, you hear the sound of people typing or a phone ringing or voices. Notice that. Focus on that for about 10 seconds, and then shift the focus back to your breathing so that you can hear what the sound of your breath sounds like. And then what I did for the TEDx is it was something that you can touch. And I just rubbed two fingertips together. I rubbed my index and my thumb together. And again, being super present and noticing like the fingertip ridges. Are your fingertips dry? Are they smooth? What's the temperature of your fingertips? And what this does is it takes the focus off of those negative emotions that are generating all that stress, anxiety. So you're quieting those and you're really kind of focusing on nothing, really. It's nothing like earth shattering. So you're kind of like scrubbing your brain clean so that when the focus is off of what's driving the stress, then you can shift that lens and shift to a right sage brain where you can be curious. You can look at things from a different perspective and just kind of release that tension.
Yeah, I love that. Now, that's huge. Definitely, I think that's one thing that we also have to do is start creating some sort of habits and things that maybe sometimes they feel a bit weird. Again, it could be as simple as something like that, as simple as going out for a walk, as simple as journaling, like little things that we got to start building. I think I know for me at least, I didn't do that really in any time while I was working for corporate America. When I ventured into being an entrepreneur and I started working on my mind and started working on different things, I started doing more of those habits, and I feel like there's a big power to that, to be able to create those habits, because it puts you on this kind of disciplined type of journey. So yeah,
completely definitely agree.
Yeah. No, Lisa, I gotta tell you, this is amazing. I definitely enjoy this conversation, and definitely we need to go out and get your book, and also we have to connect with you and see how you're able to help other people. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us before I let you go?
I would say if you have listened to this and you found value in it, I would like to give you a complimentary workbook, which actually pairs with my book.
Nice.
So you have to email me so I know, but my email address, it's info at lisahammett.com. Again, it's Lisa and then 2 M's and 2 T's and Hammett. And I would love to give you this free workbook, which can help you create a laser focused vision for your future and start generating that life that you've always wanted.
I love that. Well, thank you again for that gift. So make sure you guys send her a message. Well, Lisa, once again, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor, make sure that you share this video, tell your people, have them come out here and check out this podcast, because definitely somebody needs to hear this message. And I'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm CesarRespino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.